turn your volume? Is your volume down?
My volume is down and we are on. So, hello everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Hold on, I just got to get a couple things set up here before we get this whole thing started. So, glad you are here. Thanks for being here. We're happy to have you on our 4th ever live stream. It's now been like an entire month. If you could please do me a favor, please let me know that you can hear us, just because, well, if we don't have any noise coming through and we're just talking and you're like, oh, we can't hear anything you're saying, it's always nice to know that you can indeed hear us. So just leave us a little chat down there that says, yeah, we can hear you. It's okay. All right. I see a yes.
Yep.
The official yes, our audio is coming through. So again, thank you so much for being here. We've got some fun things going on tonight. We are going to talk about what is something that I really like to talk about, and that is how to save money in this aquarium hobby, because it can be expensive.
Yes, it can.
I once heard somebody say the best way to make $1,000 in fish keeping is to start with $10,000. So that's not a joke original to me. I'm sure some of you have heard it before, but yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Before we get like really into things, we wanted to make a couple of quick announcements, and we are going to make them quick. Thing number one is you made some changes to the website, primetimeaquatics.com. I've got the shirt here. Sorry, I didn't mean to smack you. But we've got a couple shirts on clearance, and once they're gone, they're gone. So here we have the Primetime Aquatics, the orange and yellows, and then the red ones are on clearance only while supplies last.
Yes, very limited quantities. We are discontinuing those colors. We're sticking with the blue and the original chalkboard, and then that will make way for some new designs that we have coming.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. So I'm excited about the new shirts coming out soon. So if you like those shirts, check them out. They're 25% off, I think.
25% off.
Yeah, so that's a great way to wear some really awesome stuff. So we have that. And then, today we are going to be talking about how to save money in the aquarium hobby. I hope you enjoy it. So I think the first thing is, when we're talking about the aquarium hobby, we're all here because we love it. I mean, if you're sitting here watching a live stream about tropical fish on a Wednesday evening, chances are you probably like fish quite a bit. And so it can be so rewarding, as all of you know. I mean, I don't have to sell the aquarium hobby to you. The fact that you can just sit there and chill out and relax, especially if you had a stressful time, especially in times like this where sometimes it can be a little hard to get out and you don't quite know what to do with that. And at least you have your fish and you can kind of hang out. And what's so interesting is they really don't know what's going on in the outside world, outside of that tank, other than when their owner walks in with some fish food. Like, they get all excited, but beyond that, they have no idea what's going on around them, which is in some ways kind of interesting to think about. And it's really nice too that we can share the hobby with family members, friends, and even if you don't have family members or friends that are showing up in your home enjoying the hobby with you, it's always fun because we can do fish nerdy things like this and talk about fish on a live stream.
Yes.
Which is also, it's pretty cool.
It sure is for fish nerds.
What we're going to be talking about tonight, I had a list of things, and they're not in any particular order, but as I was thinking about it, I wanted to try and make sense of this thing and try to get some kind of an order. Mm-hmm. All right?
Okay.
So
good luck.
I know. And you've got a lot of things you want to share tonight too, right? Because you've done a lot of DIY things that have actually saved us quite a bit of money.
I try.
So I think the first thing is, let's talk about fish tanks, because a lot of people look at just the tanks themselves and like, wow, if you just go and impulse buy a tank at a pet store.
Done that.
Oh, we've all done that. You know, I can remember when we set up the 150 gallon, I just kind of was like, yep, I want the 150 gallon from the PetSmart thing. It wasn't even on sale. And I think it was like $700 or $800 with the stand and the light. And at that time, it came with an under gravel filter. So we got that deal. Don't know where that went, but it's probably in the house somewhere. So the tanks themselves, they can be expensive, especially larger tanks. And most of you know, obviously, the dollar per gallon sales. When you do those, that's a great way to save a lot of money. I know, the fish community gets really hyped and excited. Like, hey, when's the next dollar per gallon sale at Petco? And I think even like sometimes PetSmart has them, and even maybe Pet Supplies Plus. That's hard to say. they may have them
Yeah, we
occasionally.
don't have one too close by, but we should really put that on the rounds.
Yeah.
I've heard that they have a pretty decent selection, even of fish.
Well, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
But so the $1 per gallon sale, that will save you a lot of money.
Yes.
Don't totally discount used tanks. I mean, I know some of you think that, you're always taking a chance with the used tank, right? Especially if it's 5, 10, 15 years old. We've got some of those. What?
Oh, I see some shout outs about the tank in the bag.
Oh,
there.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, it is enjoying the color display. It decided to join in for tonight.
Yes. So that tank behind us, Joanna did a scape on that. That was on her channel. The small scape that just came out today. It's really cool. If you check out that video, you're going to see all the different types of lights. It's not the only thing it can do. So it's a pretty cool tank. But back to
tanks.
my tanks, right?
Well, it was a tank.
So the $1 per gallon sale is a great way to save money. Used tanks. Now, I think some of the, it's all market specific, right? So at least around us, my ears start to perk up when I'm looking at roughly around 50 cents per gallon, especially as we get into the larger tanks. I mean, if you can buy them new for $1 per gallon, then just the tank itself. I'm not talking about once you add in lids and lights and I've got a stand and all this other stuff. And here's all the fish tank stuff I've collected over the years. You can have that too. Wind up throwing half of it away. But if you can find tanks for around 50 cents a gallon, you're doing pretty good. I know, like at the swaps and the auctions, especially the swaps when they bring them to, or especially the auctions when they bring them to auction, usually that's when the bidding starts to slow down, almost regardless of the size of the tank. I mean, if you're like 90 gallon or less, once you hit that 50 cents to 75 cents a gallon, people generally stop bidding at that point. So used tanks can certainly be an option.
I'm just going to send this out. We're in the Chicagoland area, if you're wondering where we are from.
That's our market. So, well, because I said, in our market, they go for this amount. So that is our market.
Sure.
So yeah, we got the tank side of things, and there are other ways. And I'm sure, as we get into this, if you've got really cool ways to save money on various things, leave that in the live chat. I'm sure people will like to hear some things. You have something you want to share? Ways to save money? We'll just switch this up.
Do you want me to start right here?
Well, I don't know. Whatever you want to do. Okay.
Right. This was one of my favorite DIYs. It was at Dollar Store, because you see all these DIYs at the Dollar Tree. That's my favorite dollar store. Well, why not do it for fish keeping too? This is one of my favorites.
Hanging a picture of strangers above your tank.
No, they have cheap dollar frames with glass or plexiglass acrylic inserts that you can use for just a quick lid.
A quick lid.
A quick lid. Like this one, I can very easily use it on our 7.5 gallon.
Hold on.
In a pinch. And you can even like glue a little handle on it or something. Bam, you got yourself a lid.
Well, I'll see you your lid, and I'll raise you a lid.
You can have that lid. I'll keep
It's
this
dirty.
one
It's used. I actually took this off your Betta Mahachai tank, so we'll have to put that back. So this is another option here, and we use this a lot. So as you get more tanks, right? As you get more tanks, or you have tanks that are odd sizes, this polycarbonate can be a really good buy. And that, if you've got like a 125, or you've got bow front tanks, or you've got like for us, our 50-gallon low boys, this stuff. So what this is polycarbonate. It's greenhouse siding. And again, it's dirty. I'm sorry for that. It's an in-use thing. There are different thicknesses. I believe this is 6 mil. I think there's 4, there's 6, and there's 8, at least what I've seen on the internet. The 6 mil I like is a kind of a happy medium. And the 4 mil, we've used that before, and it starts to bow a little bit over time. This has been really good. You can cut holes in it, and I just use scissors, especially if you're going with the corrugation. You can use scissors. It's actually very easy to cut, but you can use a jigsaw. There's many different ways, a hacksaw. You can cut holes in it for filtration, for like feeding holes. The only thing that you have to kind of keep in mind is you're going to want to probably either epoxy this, or I had a friend, when I did Rick's fish room tour, he actually put a piece of plastic over this just to keep water out, because if water gets inside of these things, then you might start to get a little bit of algae growth, or it might look a little dirty. We don't really care so much about that, but this is good. It's going to be much cheaper, and it doesn't break the way glass does. Like I can just take this and chuck it on the ground from a ladder, and it's fine. By the way, before I forget, I have put links to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in the description below. So if you're like, oh, what did he say? The polycarbonate, what is that exactly? They're Amazon affiliate links, but even if you just want the product and what it looks like, you can check out those links, and hopefully that will be helpful if you don't want to go back through an entire live stream to find stuff. There'll be links in the description with the products and also the playlist, because we've done a lot on how to save money in the aquarium hobby, so we've got that playlist there as well. So for lids, you can do the cool little trick, and that's especially good for smaller tanks where
Absolutely.
the polycarbonate might be better for larger tanks. What else you got?
Oh, me again?
Yeah, we'll just take turns.
Well, that was...
That was your only show and tell?
Well, no, I mean...
Here.
Oh, we both had the same one. Okay, wait.
Wait, I'll get it. Hold on.
Oh, you actually...
I did.
Oh my gosh.
I was lugging up all kinds of stuff from the basement.
You do notice that he has props. He actually
Go
brought
ahead.
this as a prop.
I did, because I don't think people know what a rock looks like.
It's a rock.
It's a rock.
We like to get a lot of our rocks at the landscaping place because way better prices than at the fish store. Fish store typically is going to be $3.99 a pound.
In our market.
Yes, and if you're looking to scape some tanks and get some serious, nice looking tank, you're going to be dropping a bundle. So...
Can I hold the rock?
Yeah.
This is very therapeutic. So this is an example of one of the rocks that we got from the landscaping place. Now for us, we generally look for two different types of rocks. One are the rocks that are just labeled like river rocks, river stone. To give you an idea, so you mentioned $3 to $4 a pound. $3 to $4.
It could be for a pound.
I got this. $3 to $4 a pound at most pet stores. This stuff is like 30 cents. Same rocks, just way cheaper. The other type of rock, and I didn't because I forgot to go in the garage and get a big chunk of it, and that's flagstone.
Oh, yeah.
That we'll use for a lot of our cichlid tanks. So if you look at some of our Lake Tanganyika setups and you see that white rock that's kind of flat, that's flagstone. That stuff is even cheaper. That stuff can go for like 19 to 25 cents a pound, and we really like it. Now that can alter your water parameters a little bit. So if you've got soft water and it's a lower pH, that can potentially change your water chemistry a little bit. The river rocks I found don't do that as much, but just something to keep in mind. So rocks, landscaping places, they can save all kinds of money. Here, I want you to have that. You can hold that the rest of the time.
This actually is a nice shaped rock.
Absolutely. So the other thing that you could consider, so we've talked about fish tanks, we've talked about lids and how you can save money there, rocks, sand. I know most of you are familiar with just doing like a pool filter sand, and I did a video on that a long time ago where I compared pool filter sand, I think, to like Nat Geo sand. That's not even on the market anymore. Bonnie, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. So the pool filter sand, it depends on the type. Now for us, the only pool filter sand that I've been able to find around us in like the home improvement stores has been a very a very small grain. So it gets a little difficult if you want to run a gravel vac over the surface just to get up fish waste and stuff. So that's been a little bit of an issue, but you can save a massive amount of money. I mean, if you've got a large tank, you can get, I think it's like 50 pounds for like $10, where normally with your substrate, you're probably looking at about $1 to $1.50 a pound, somewhere in there, depending on the substrate. But when you're talking about a 50-pound bag for $10, that can go a long way. But you do have to be careful, and it is undoubtedly a pain to rinse. So we usually put pool filter sand in a 5-gallon bucket. The trick, if you don't know this, for pool filter sand is you take your hose, you go out in the yard, you shove the hose all the way in the bottom of that 5-gallon bucket. I mean, all the way down there, and then you run it like full blast. And what's going to happen is all of that cloudiness from the pool filter sand will come up, then you got to dump it and just keep doing that. And it might take you 15, 20 minutes to rinse out a 5-gallon bucket worth of that stuff. But if you want to save a lot of money, that's one way to do it. Then you mentioned the gravel you've used.
Oh, yeah, like the little pea gravel that you get at the home improvement store, too, in the big bags.
So, and again, that stuff you want to rinse it out really, really well. But the pea gravel, we have used that from time to time, and it does work. So and it can save a lot of money. Again, instead of paying $1 to $1.50 a pound, it's a lot less than what you would typically pay. So that's the substrate side of things. And then we also have the big stuff, and that is where I think we can save a lot of money. And that is, and I brought this we used this last week, so now I'm using props 2 weeks in a row. Is that okay?
That's tacky.
I know it is, and I couldn't get around it, but most of you, when you have things like hang-on back filters, you might use something like this, where it's like, okay, I've got these cartridges, and they do work well. They've got the, usually there's carbon inside of them and some filter floss. But the problem is when you've got to replace these things, even if you get them on Amazon, it'll save you money there for sure, but they're expensive. I mentioned this last week. The better way to do that is to just buy bulk filter floss. And so again, it doesn't have to be the blue bonded stuff, but we actually have a roll in our fish room I was going to bring it up here, but I realized if I brought up the roll, we wouldn't be able to fit it. It's huge, right? It's probably at least about 3 feet in diameter.
Yeah, it looks like a big sleeping bag.
This is a great way to save money, and that is using bulk filter floss. Buy bulk sponge and cut that up. That's going to trap a lot of your waste. The sponge will house the beneficial bacteria. Just make sure there's no added chemicals. Just make sure, like if you're using sponge, that it's not some kind of a dish sponge that all of a sudden it's got something added to it, like an anti-mold substance or something like that. So usually the sponge we use, it's still aquarium filter sponge. And the filter floss that we use is usually for a fish tank. So again, we've got links on Amazon, but the other place that you could check out, I'm going to share more in a second from this company, that's gemco.com. Gemco.
Jehm.
JEHMCO.com. They've got a lot of really good like bulk stuff. So if you're like, I've got a fish room and I've got 20, 30, 40, 50 tanks or something, that is definitely a place that you could check out. Now, the media, obviously, that's just a running cost, so you're going to save a lot of money there. The other thing that you could consider, and again, I know I've used this prop before, but if you get more tanks, now you might want to consider running towards sponge filters, moving towards sponge filters, run, sprint, don't look back. So you could look at the sponge filters. And the nice thing about these is the sponge filters in and of themselves are cheaper than maybe your standard hang on the back filters, canisters, internals, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But the real savings, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Can you do this? This is going to be a big deal because Joanna's going to have to like, we care.
I'll be right back.
About these live streams. We brought up the big stuff. You got it? Okay, check this out. This, it's kind of sort of backwards, sorry. This is a pump that we used to use. This is a Gemco pump. So again, gemco.com. This happens to be the LPH 45, I think it is. And we used this for a while, and the only reason why it's up here not in use is because we outgrew it. We added a lot more tanks in a much shorter period of time than we thought. The cool thing about this pump is it was running at least 45 tanks or so. Clint, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm brand new to fish. I'm a brand new fish keeper. I can't tell you how much I value your information. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully you find this worthwhile. But these pumps, and it doesn't have to be this, right? I like these because they are linear air piston pumps. They are relatively quiet, and they are just absolute workhorses. We've got the LPH 60 in our fish room now, which is running up to, I'm sorry.
On my shoulder?
Yeah, I'll just put it on your head.
Catch.
But these are really great. So the nice thing is, once again, is you can run one of these, and the LPH 60 that we have right now is running close to 80 tanks, and a lot of those tanks have multiple lines. We got the brine shrimp hatcheries, so there is a lot of potential. Now, when it comes to pumps like that, here's another pro tip for you. Don't stress about it, especially if you're going to go through gemco.com. And I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I really love that company. I absolutely love their customer service. They're old school, so you're not going to be able to order there online. You're going to have to, once you figure out what you want, you have to call and place your order on the phone with a person.
It's
not
weird.
online. It is. It's like, wow. I mean, I have to, all right, you got to dial the number and like, oh, hello. But the cool thing about the pumps, that's what you say.
No, I know.
Oh,
I'm just laughing because you can't even order a pizza. He's like a phonophobe.
Are you sharing our dirty laundry on the World Wide
he
Web?
Will never.
It's not that I'm a phonophobe. I don't know.
You will never place an order for pizza. I'm just saying.
It's just a pizza thing. But I'll order.
That's why I was laughing.
I will order the heck out of a filter. You
probably would.
I would. I will just be like, oh, I need a filter. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? So, yeah, you call them. Now, the cool thing, what I started to say before I was so rudely interrupted and internet bullied is I feel cyber bullied right now. Now I don't remember what I was going to say.
Good.
I have no idea. And it was going to be something complimentary to somebody.
You were calling.
Oh, yeah. So with the pumps, don't stress about the pumps, because what you can do is when you call them, they're going to ask you like a million questions. How many tanks do you have? What size of the tanks? What kind of circuit are you going to run for your air system? How deep are the tanks? So that actually, they make that extremely easy when it comes to buying pumps and central filtration for your fish room. Okay. Do you have something else you want to share? Do you remember anything you want to share? Or do you want me to just keep going here?
You can keep going.
You want me to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. So we talked about sand, gravel, lids, tanks, filtration, media, plus the pumps. What about plants? Because that's a great way. There's ways to save money there, right?
Plants.
And they kind of save themselves.
Well, yes. You grow your own. So you get some plants, and then you grow some more. That's what's the great thing about plants, because if you ever get plastic plants, they won't grow anymore. You just get what you buy.
Yeah, but they also don't die.
That's true.
That was my cool ninja move. That was my sick burn.
Okay, so my favorites, you may know, are Anubias. Anubias nana petite is the best plant in my opinion, but I've grown very fond of crypts. And especially, I think the first time that I started to love crypts was when the crypt grew a baby crypt.
That is pretty cool. They're so cute.
They are so cute, and a really mature crypt is quite stunning.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, growing plants is a great way. Now some of like the Anubias, that grows pretty slow, but like your crypts in the right situation. I saw earlier that someone was talking about duckweed. Duckweed is a nuisance for many people, but if you need it to feed to like goldfish or turtles, or for us, we feed it to a lot of our cichlids. The big thing there is you want very slow water movement. You do want some, but it needs to be slow. Like it grows really well in tanks where we have sponge filters, because the center of that tank tends to not have a lot of water movement, and so we get a lot of it there. So good light. You've got a decent number of fish, so you got the nitrates are a little bit higher for them, and they'll lower it, and you just keep scooping it out as it grows. Now, the other thing to think about is fish tank stands. That can be really expensive. It's not, it really isn't economically viable if you're like, oh, I just got a 20 gallon and I'm going to build my own stand. Now, it might be good because maybe you get it set to the exact height. Maybe you want better build quality if you do it yourself. Where you can really start to save a lot of money building fish tank stands is when you want to double stack them. So if you're somebody who's like, you know what, I'm running out of space, I'd like to stack a couple 20 longs, or I'd like to stack a couple 40 gallon breeders. And yes, there are other stands out there that home improvement stores that will allow you to do that. But building stands, I know wood prices are a little bit higher right now with everything that's going on, but typically, at least in terms of just the wood and the screws, like a 40 gallon breeder or a 55 gallon double stand, I'm pretty sure I could. The cost is certainly less than $100, so maybe it was like $60 or $70. And if you're buying like the iron double stands, that can get a little bit expensive. So you could probably save around 50%. Now, of course, you've got your time investment, but that's just part of the thing.
Right.
Did you have anything you want to add, or I can just?
And you can create the stands with cinder blocks too, right?
You know what? That's a really good point. Thank you.
Yep.
So
wasn't my idea.
That's
Steezy Franklin.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so yeah, the cinder blocks with just the 2x4s, the 2x6s, you're somewhat limited in the width of the tank at that point, but yeah, that's absolutely great. For most of the standard size tanks, it can be much cheaper than even building a stand, because now you don't even have to buy as much wood. You don't have to buy the screws. You don't have to spend the time. It's just, if you know how to play with Legos, you can probably build a cinder block stand with 2x4s.
Yes. It'd be fun.
And they don't hurt as bad when you step on them. Yeah, public service announcement. So the other thing to think about is fish. One of the most expensive things that we can do in the hobby is purchase fish. We happen to be very blessed in that we have some extremely good freshwater fish clubs in the Chicagoland area, such as the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association, Greenwater Aquarium Society, the Chicago Library Society, we've got the Chicago Plant Society. Mm-hmm. A lot of people ask me where I get my fish. In fact, a lot of people ask me, hey, what are some good fish stores? I'm in the Chicagoland area. Where do you buy your fish? I would say at this point, probably over 90% of our fish come from the fish clubs. And I know that's not something that's available to everybody, but if it's certainly worth checking out. Are there any fish clubs within 100 miles? And the reason why I say that is if they're holding fish swaps or fish auctions, you wouldn't believe the kind of money that you can save. Even in the monthly meetings for us, there have been times where I have bought like bags of fish for like 6 or 8 peacock cichlids for $1. Now, granted, they're only a couple inches, maybe an inch to 2 inches in size, but like $1 or $2. Why? Because there's 20 people there and most people have bred them and they don't have space. And so I'm walking out of these meetings and spending like $10, $15. And I've got bags and bags of fish that if I let them grow for 3 or 4 months and you were to see that size fish that's now colored up at a pet store, each one of them would be between $20 and $40 easily. So that's why, for the most part, that's where we buy our fish. So highly recommend, if you can find a fish club in your area, try to attend, see what they've got, see if they've got a wide variety. The swaps are great, auctions especially. Here's another tip for you. If you ever find a fish club auction, stick around until the end of the day. As a seller, I hate when my fish go up, so if the auction starts at, let's say, 10 a.m. and goes till, let's say, 2, or they generally go until they end, right? So maybe it's 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and now I've got bags of fish, which inevitably happens to everybody. You start getting bags of fish after 12:30, 1 o'clock, and they go for pennies on the dollar. So if you're a buyer, often you're going to be in really good shape with that. But as a seller, it can kind of stink. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So backgrounds. Did you mention the backgrounds yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, there's so many different options for backgrounds. This guy over here likes to paint the background black.
I do.
Or black, or you paint
because
it with
it's permanent.
black paint.
Well, I mean, semi-permanent.
Yeah, you can get
scrape it off. Yeah.
I kind of like to not do that.
Yep. Bonnie, thank you so much. Appreciate it again.
Bonnie.
She's on a streak. Thank you, Bonnie. Really appreciate it.
There's vinyl. There's so many different options, and I did the last time that we brought up backdrops in the video, I was going to have a standalone video for different, somewhat unusual options for backdrops, because I've historically used paper. I used to be a scrapbooker, have gobs and gobs of 12 by 12 paper, which kind of comes in handy for the tanks. It's not really that good for when water splashes, as it always does. Yeah. But luckily I was a hoarder, so I would have frequently the same color, on multiple sheets. But I'm going away from that, and at some point I got to do that video because there's a lot of different options. Yeah, for backdrops.
There are. Mm-hmm. And we talked about doing that. And so yeah, mm-hmm. I like to paint where you're saving money is if you go to the store and you buy and it sounds like, oh, this is not really a huge money saver, but it can be. If you've got like a 75-gallon tank or you got a 6-foot tank, and you know how you can go to the store and you can buy the backgrounds and you kind of tape them up. That, believe it or not, can be a little bit expensive. You might walk out and be like, I just spent $15 or $20 on this background paper stuff, where for you with the crafting paper, yes, that is a definite concern. If it gets wet, it can start to curl up, it can start to discolor a little bit. So if you don't have access to the back of your tank after you set it up, that might not be the best option, but the vinyl can be very good. And what I do is as most of you know when you watch my videos, most of my tanks are painted black. And so I just use the craft paint, like the Americana.
Yeah, it's
a water-based
craft acrylic paint.
Yeah, and I just roll that on. It usually takes about 3 coats, so I'll roll it on, let it dry, do that 3 times, and then it's ready to go. And the nice thing is it's permanent enough where it holds up well, even if it gets a little bit wet. Now, if you soak it, it will discolor, but if it gets a little bit wet, it's okay. But if I decide, you know what, I want to change it to blue, mm-hmm. I can take a razor blade, scrape all that off, probably within 15 minutes, and then start painting again.
What a mess. Who would want to do that?
Well, I'm not saying I want to. I happen to love the black backgrounds, but that's a personal thing. No. Now, the other thing. I did at one point, for a lot of people, they like the 3D backgrounds, and we're getting into that more, and we've got a couple builds coming up where we've got some more 3D backgrounds that we're going to be doing. You can actually do those yourself for not a lot of money. At some point, I will do a tutorial on how I do mine, but it just basically takes styrofoam sheets, some epoxy, and some cement and a
and
little bit of
lot
cement color.
Patience.
And a lot of patience, yeah, because when you do that, it is absolutely going to spike your pH and your water hardness off the charts. And so what you have to do when you do those faux kind of rock walls using the styrofoam and the cement is basically soak that background and then drain and soak and drain. And I think that took like a week and a half because we did it in a 20-gallon tank. And so it's in a 20-gallon tank. I think if you wanted to see it, we haven't done a fish room tour in a while, so I think it might be in the January 2020 part. I think it would be the part 3 video. It's probably towards the end of that video, and you can just catch a glimpse of it, like, oh, that's kind of what it looked like. But I'm going to be doing more of that. You actually might be experimenting with it a little bit as well in future builds, and it's very, very cheap. So it's instead of spending on a 20-gallon 3D background, maybe you're spending $100 or so. You can probably get it done for yourself with maybe $20. So little patience, and yeah, it works out pretty well. So those are some money saving tips.
Yeah.
I had another one.
Oh.
I'm just on a roll. And then we'll take questions. I promise. We're going to answer some of your questions. Fish food. One of the things that you could potentially consider is the little small jars of fish food, containers of fish food that can be expensive. And if you've got more than a couple tanks, one of the things that you can do is buy the larger tubs of the same brand. And so if you go on Amazon, you're like, okay, this is my favorite type of fish food. I want to look for a larger container. What I generally do is I keep the smaller container and I'll pour some food in that because I prefer not to have fish food out at room temperature for more than like a week. All right. Can it last longer than a week? Absolutely. So like, oh my gosh, I've kept it out for a month. Is my fish going to die? Probably not. At least mine never did. But you get a large container of your favorite fish food. You fill the smaller one stays out, and then the larger one either goes in the fridge, but we put it in the freezer. So all of our pelleted foods, our flake foods, all of that stuff winds up in the freezer, and then we just refill it as we need. And those larger quantities wind up saving a lot of money. Plus, you don't have to go to the store all the time to buy new small containers. Yeah. So that, I think I've exhausted a lot of my brain with all of that. Trying to think if there was anything else we talked. Oh,
lights. What about lights?
Oh, lights. Did we not talk about lights? Oh my gosh.
I don't think you talked about lights.
I don't think I did either.
No.
And then remind me, there's one other one. Lights. Lights can be one of the most expensive things that you put on a fish tank. It really challenges even the filtration. You get the high-end lights. You know, we have some Kessel lights that are running on a 75-gallon, and you could be into that for $700. Just for the Kessel lights, like the Fluval 3.0s are fantastic lights, but they can get expensive. You can save a lot of money on lights, especially if you don't have live plants or your live plants tend to be low light beginner plants. Some of the things that we do to save money, just so that we're not buying high-end lights, I really like the Hygger lights lately. And we did a review on them a while back, but those Hygger lights thank you very much, Marty, for the super chat. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Marty.
The Hygger lights I like a lot. They're one of my favorite lights when it comes to the way they look, the spectrum of light in the tank. I find them very well balanced. They're not very expensive. They're probably not much more expensive than like the Beamswork lights, which can be another thing where those Beamswork lights for the most part have been a workhorse in our fish room. They're also very bright, so there's an advantage there. And then if you're looking for like maybe a light on a 55-gallon or a 75, like a standard 4-foot tank, then you might be looking at shop lights. So if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever big box sort of stores that you have, home improvement stores that you have in your area, check out those, because sometimes you can get a 4-foot LED that has pretty decent color. You just have to make sure the lumens of the shop light match about what you want from your favorite fish tank light, whatever that is. And usually what I have to do is I spray paint the outside, because most of the time they're white and I don't want that white light on top, like the case of it, the metal case. So those are ways that I think we've saved a decent amount. And some people will take actually the string lights and wrap them around PVC. And then you can get those from Amazon. You can get a whole, like a 100-foot roll of those enclosed string lights that are basically outdoor lights, and wrap those around a PVC and then hang the PVC above the tank. That works especially well if you've got like a canopy where you're not really going to see that. So it's not shining all over the place, but that can work.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, I promise, and then we're going to start taking questions. And this is not something that you necessarily Well, I guess it is something that you buy. Quarantine. I know this seems kind of odd. What do you mean quarantine? Quarantining your fish in the long run will potentially save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on how many fish tanks and the size of your tanks and the fish that you have in those tanks. It is absolutely worth it to spend a little bit of money at the dollar per gallon sale on maybe a 10 gallon or a 20 gallon, depending on the size fish that you keep. Put a sponge filter in there. We've done a video on how to quarantine fish. When you get those new fish, leave them in there for 4 weeks. I know it seems like a long time, but I promise you, the last thing you want is when you've got fish that you love and care about, and even if they don't cost a lot of money, you've got a well-established tank. One of the most stressful things in the fish keeping hobby is when you wind up with sick fish. So if you can quarantine your fish, you're going to save a lot of money. You're going to save a lot of time through keeping your fish alive and not having to buy meds and all kinds of other stuff, and potentially having plants die and other things happening to your tank, maybe an ammonia spike because the meds you used destroyed your cycle. So yeah, it can be a very good money-saving thing. So that's, now I think I've exhausted my brain after all of that. So what kind of questions do we have? Did you find any good ones? The totes. Yes, Michael, thank you so much. You are absolutely right. Totes can work very well for things like grow out. We've done videos on that. I think they were like $8 or $10 for a 30-gallon tote. The ones that we like they're on Amazon. They're black and they have the yellow lid. They're more of a harder plastic, but they're extraordinarily durable. We have, like I said, the 30-gallon totes, and they work really well. Like, there's no bowing out of those things. I don't think there's any real opportunity that they're going to crack on us or anything like that. All right. What else? What else do we have? Okay. Let me scroll on up here and see what we've missed so far. Karen Aubrey said, I hate my kit lights. Yeah, you know what?
Some
Karen,
of them are the worst.
Yeah, some of them can be okay, especially like some of the ones now where they say they're for plants. They're probably not going to be like awesome for the highlight plants or the non-beginner plants, intermediate plants. But a lot of the kit lights, they'll work. Again, if you don't have plants, they're okay. But once you start adding plants, the kit lights, sometimes they got to go. They just got to go. All right, let's see here. What else do we have? A lot of conversations people got going on. Ashley says, can't wait for the DIY 3D background video. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. The problem now is I was going to do it when the weather was warmer, because when you're painting styrofoam with cement, it's not exactly something you want to do indoors. So I'll have to clear out a little space in the garage and take care of that. And hopefully I'll get that out relatively soon, because like I said, there's a lot of work that we want to do with those. Let's see here. Andrew says, from Chicago, got a 90-gallon with sump. Want to try cichlids, thinking of Psilocy, ACI, yellow labs. Am I on the right track? I think you are. 90-gallon is actually a pretty nice tank for imbunas, which is what you're talking about, because they're so crazy. They're going to use the entire water column. They're going to be swimming up and down all around. So the 90 gallons got the same footprint as the 75, but definitely I think the yellow labs, hold on now, where's the question? Yeah, yellow labs, Psilocy, ACI, those are going to give you, you're going to get your yellows, you can get your blues with the nice dark blue stripes. The ACI is going to give you some bluish purpley color with yellow fins. The yellow labs.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else you could do with that. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes the red zebras work, and so you get that nice orange color. But just be careful with that. I would probably add them last. If you get multiple males, you might have more problems. But if you get like a male, like sometimes we lucked out and we got like a male and like 4 females, and that was a pretty good mix. So, yeah. All right, what else do we got? Moving on up.
What tank has the same footprint as a 55?
Okay. There are 3 main tanks when it comes to the footprint of a 55. So a 55 gallon is 4 feet long. It's 12.5 inches wide. The 2 other tanks that have the same footprint are the 33 longs. And so we have 3 of those in our fish room. So they've got the same length and width. What I really love about the 33 longs is they're only about a foot tall, where I think the 55s might, I don't remember exactly how tall they are, but they're somewhere around 22 to 23 inches tall. So that can be a bit of an issue. So a lot of times that the 33s are pretty good. Also the 40 gallons. So the 40 gallon tanks are the same, 40 long are the same length and width. They're just also a little bit, so they're kind of in between the 55 and the 33. Beyond that, I don't recall there being any others. So
thank you, Michael.
Michael, thank you so much. Just want to say thank you for the video library. I have learned so much, and it's been a great reference for me. That's awesome to hear. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do over the few years that we've been on YouTube, is try to make it a one-stop thing where it's like everything you know about water parameters is there, everything you need to know about filtration is there. And obviously, I'm not the only person doing this, and so I always recommend, if you're looking for information, it's always good to have more than one source, right? When you're doing your research, I very rarely will do research on something and look at one video and be like, yep, made up my mind, I'm good to go. I usually watch 3 or 4 different videos and try to come up with a consensus, and then look at my personal situation and see what best fits for me. But glad that it's helpful.
All right, 3 questions that I noticed.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? Let's see if I can remember them all.
Okay.
First, Mark Hill wants to know what paint to use. We like the acrylic paints that you can get. You can get them at Walmart, any kind of craft store. Just the craft acrylic paint.
Yeah.
It's water based. It's great. And somebody had hot pink algae.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Hot
600cc garage.
We have red
Boom.
algae.
So I wonder if it's probably similar. I'm very strange when it comes to this algae. I don't know why, but I don't want to scrape it off. And it started years and years ago in my 75 gallon. And it's not, in some light it does look hot pink, but in other light it looks red. And it also depends on where it's growing. It does not grow fast, at least in our case. It grows very, very slowly, but it is fairly persistent over time. So in our 75 gallon, we've got this red algae that's growing on the rocks. It started to grow on the glass. It even grows on the gravel. Mm-hmm. But then I noticed it, and I don't know if it's feeding on something, but I find it sometimes on our flagstone. So now I'm seeing it in our 50 gallon molly tank. It's growing a little bit on the substrate, and it's kind of growing on the glass, but extremely slowly. And I'm also seeing it in some of the tanks that have the flagstone, both in our 33 long, and I think I just spotted it in one of the 40 breeders. So I don't know what it is.
Better not come into my tanks,
but
I will scrape it off.
It is an algae. As long as it's not on the front glass, I kind of like it, just because it's different, right? I'm used to seeing the green hair algae, the brown algae. Someday we'll do a video on algae or a live stream, but there's different ways to get rid of all this algae. But I have not yet seen anything that will consume that algae. And I have lots of different types of algae-eating organisms in our fish room. So that would go for snails, shrimp, bristlenose plecos, clown plecos, the fish that would normally eat algae, like the Florida flagfish, and some types of other live bears. I haven't come across anything that will consume that. I don't know if it's poisonous to fish, or if they're just like, oh, this is horrible, right? So it's like asparagus of the algae land. So yeah.
All right, can you use a 1 gallon tank for a quarantine?
Depends on what you want to quarantine. So yes and no. If you are planning, that's a tough question. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 ways to look at it when it comes to a tank that small. One is if they're very small fish, or it's a single fish, like let's say it's a betta, and you put that in a 1 gallon and you have a cycled filter. Let's say you go bare bottom, cycled filter. Chances are that cycled, like let's say it's a sponge filter, you put that in, chances are you're not going to have any water quality issues. The second reason why a smaller quarantine tank might be advantageous, not necessarily all the way down to a 1 gallon, but a smaller tank, is if you do have to medicate, you are medicating a very small volume. So as opposed to, oh yeah, I've got this dovie and I had to put it in a 55 gallon quarantine tank and now it's got ick or a bacterial infection, and you're dumping in a lot of meds in a 55. Where if you've got a 1 gallon in this case, or maybe like we use 10 gallon tanks for our quarantine tanks, and that works out well. We had an ick outbreak in a group of fish that we brought in not that long ago. It was super easy to treat that tank because it's a small volume. So the 1 gallon, in that respect, if you've got cycled media, you know you're only going to keep it in that tank for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe. The issue is going to be if it's going to be sometimes hard to manage stable water parameters. And so now you've got a fish potentially in a very small volume of water. If they're not sick, they could potentially get stressed out there. So I'm on the fence with that one. I mean, they'd have to be really small fish or maybe like a betta. But the thing is with bettas, a lot of times you're buying them in those cups. And most of the time, not always, but most of the time, because they're isolated from one another, I'd say all the fish that we bring in, those are the fish that are least likely to bring in, certainly ick, into a tank, because there's really no opportunity for them to interact with other environments because their water is getting changed out on a daily basis. So if it were me, I'd probably feel more comfortable with at least a 5.5 or a 10. Could you get by in a pinch with a 1 gallon? Maybe, but it might be a little bit complicated. All right. What else? What else do we have?
Let's see. Oh,
hold on.
Buffalo photo. First time catching your live feed. Is there somewhere else I can send questions if you're not able to get to his?
So leave your question in the live chat. We'll try to get to it. When it comes to questions, and I mentioned this, I think it was last week or the week before, believe it or not, the best way to leave questions is actually in the YouTube comment section, because I'm in that every day. And I try to key in on questions. It's getting to a point now where it's getting much, much harder to respond to everyone. I try as best I can. Outside of that, Instagram, Facebook. The one place, believe it or not, that's probably the worst place to leave a question is I've got the Primetime Aquatics. If you go to primetimeaquatics.com, there's an email address there. Sometimes people leave questions there. I generally do not check that email unless I see something about a question for an order coming through. So the best place, we'll try to get to it here, but if not, YouTube comment section is a really good place. Tim, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Tim.
And right below, I know not to use airline for a CO2 line, but in a pinch, could I use it for 7 business days until my CO2 hose gets here in the mail? I just got a new CO2 art and the hose is too short. I have never run CO2. I don't know why you can't use that line. So unfortunately, I wish I could give you a better answer, but I don't want to say something that I don't know if it's, I don't know why. I don't know why you can't use airline unless it's just not going to be a tight fit. If somebody's run CO2 and knows the answer to that question, could you please at Tim with that one and let him know if it's okay for a week? But I really don't know. So let's see here. Fish Kid, my betta fish died of velvet. Any recommendation on meds? So wait, your betta fish, I'm sorry, first of all, I'm really sorry that happened. Died of velvet, any recommendation on meds? So is the concern that the velvet is going to spread to other fish in the tank, or just for future reference? I would say, and now the med names are just completely, I just blanked on them. Probably the best thing to do is go to Fritz Aquatics and go to their freshwater meds section. And why can't I think? I'm like totally blanking on the med. I'm
really?
Like, go to fritzaquatics.com. They've got meds that are separated by bacterial infection and fungal infections and protozoal infections. And so that will help you. I've used those meds before and I generally have really good luck with them.
Oh, okay. Middle. All right. Buffalo photos question. How do I know how many lumens I need? Oh, that's a good question. For lights.
For lights, how many lumens do you need? Well, that is going to depend, obviously, on the types of plants that if you're keeping plants, it's going to depend on the types of plants that you keep. I tend, and maybe I'm just lazy about this, and it's probably because I'm not like an expert plant keeper either. I look at it a few different ways. And so I tend to look at lights more in terms of, and by the way, thank you, Micah, for the super chat. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I look at it in terms of price point and quality. So on the lower end, you're going to get the Beamsworks, the Night Crew lights, the Aqua Neats, even the Hygers. Not saying that they're low quality necessarily, but those are the low cost ones. they're going to grow. I have found that they grow every type of low light plant that you could possibly imagine, even in deeper tanks. So your Nubius, your Crypts, your hornwort that's floating, jungle val, that kind of stuff grows just fine. If I'm starting to delve into an area where maybe I need CO2 or maybe I'm dealing with intermediate light plants, now I'm probably kicking up my game, especially if I'm dealing with a taller tank like a 29 gallon on the smaller side or a 55 or anything that's going to be 20 inches or taller. Now I start thinking about things like the Flu Ball 3.0s, right? Where I can get a lot of light. Yes, it's going to cost more money. If I'm going beyond that, now I'm starting to look at those high-powered Kessel lights where I've got some highlight plants that I need to grow. I've got CO2 injection. So that's kind of how I look at it. I don't stress about the lumens because it's not just about the lumens. It's also about the temperature of the light. And you want to look at PAR, and it's the depth of your tank and what else you've got going on in that tank in terms of plants. So it can be, you can get overwhelmed with that in a hurry. I look at it as a price point thing, not a lumens thing. And maybe that's not the best way to do it. It's just, it keeps it simple, and I never had a problem doing it that way.
All right, I did catch a question. Apisto Borellii?
Yes.
What temperature?
We generally kept ours right around 78 degrees. So our fish room, for the most part, our fish room, it's kicking up down there like 82 right now. So with the ambient air being 82, almost all of our fish tanks are right around 78. The exception is I do have some backup heaters in some of my shell dweller tanks that sometimes fluctuate between 78 and 80. When I kept them right around 78 degrees, they were doing great. So that's generally where I keep most of my, in fact, all my Apistos have done well at that temperature. I've never had any issues with that. All right, let's see here. What else do we got? I saw something. Okay, so Deborah asked, are planaria bad? My 30 gallon has them, and I want to know, do I need to remove them? So that's a great question. I was actually getting ready to put out a video about planaria because they can be. So it depends on the inhabitants of the tank. If you've got shrimp in a tank, yes, they are not good. Usually what they do is they will destroy your shrimplets. And eventually what you see is you wind up with less and less and less shrimp over time. If you're dealing with just fish, I have not found them to be really a big deal. In fact, we had the cherry red shrimp. The boys had a breeding project. They were breeding red cherry shrimp in a 20 long. Well, because there were so many shrimp in there, they were hesitant to gravel vac. And so a lot of times the planaria come from the fact that maybe there's more detritus and fish waste and uneaten food in the substrate than what we would like. So in that shrimp tank, they were hesitant to gravel vac because they didn't want to gravel vac a lot of the shrimp up. What wound up happening is there was too much detritus in, hey Kasha, welcome. There was too much detritus in the substrate, and then the planaria started to grow out of control. We got reduced shrimp quantities, numbers, and so we moved some of the shrimp to another tank. We actually rescaped that tank. That's the one where the Nanochromis splendens are there now. And since we put those fish in the tank and we had some X-ray tetras, the planaria populations have gone down dramatically. So I'm assuming they're eating them. But also in combination with that, we've done a lot more gravel vacuuming in that tank now. So we've sucked out a lot of the detritus and the waste, at least more than what was in there before. And the numbers have gone down a lot. So that is the story with planaria. So I haven't ever seen them have a negative impact, at least on the fish that we're keeping. Okay, Lewis 500. How long can I keep 2 guppies in an Amazonic aquarium? I don't know. Is that a brand? Or is that just, are you talking about a biotope? If it's that just depends on the water parameters. So I found guppies to be relatively hardy, as long as the pH is around neutral, water hardness anywhere from somewhere between 6 and 12 degrees or even more, actually probably a little bit higher than that. They tend to do okay. So I just don't know if that's a specific aquarium or you're just talking about the biotope. Okay. Let's see here. We've got, hold on. Michael, I found my mystery snail on the ground near my tank. It was out of the water for 2 hours. Is it still alive? Hold on, the thing just moved. But is producing slime. Is the slime poisonous to my shrimp or guppies? I don't think the slime is going to be poisonous to the shrimp or guppies. It sounds like it's just a mucus secretion. 2 hours is not a long time for a mystery snail. I have had them most likely out of a tank for longer because they just do a fantastic job of finding ways to get out of the tank.
Yes, they do.
So I just, generally speaking, if they're at all wet and they're not dried and crusty, I just toss them back in. And usually within, I don't know, a few hours, you can kind of tell. If they were dead, then, I mean, it's kind of gross, but usually when snails, especially mystery snails, when they die, they, like, the body gets kind of slimy and falls out of the shell. It's really gross. If it's not doing that, it's still closed up, give it some time. The slime stuff, I don't think, is going to be harmful to your fish. Okay, let's see here. What do we got?
Wait.
What?
This is funny. Wait, I just lost the count. You moved.
I'm sorry.
Aqua AZ, listening in while doing some water changes. How appropriate is that?
That's always a fun thing to do. All right, let's see here.
Is
Kasha
Kasha
said,
telling a funny story?
did I tell you about the one time I put selenite stone in my guppy tank? The most of it dissolves and my TDS was over 1,000 and the guppies did not care at all. Oh, they might have cared long term, but we all learn lessons like that where it's like, yeah, I chucked this thing in the tank and that was a mistake, but you fixed it and now you've got a story to tell. So that's the important thing. Ryan says, I'm currently setting up a goldfish tank. Should I have a heater in the tank? Thanks. It depends. It depends on what the ambient temperature of your room is. So if you are 66, 68 degrees on a pretty consistent basis or better, they're probably going to be fine. I would say if you're going to be dipping down below that, if you're getting lower than consistent 67 to 68 on that low side, you might want to have one in there as a backup. But for the most part, most goldfish, I've never worried about putting a heater in. That's one of the advantages. You have a little bit less when it comes to buying equipment. All right. Brian, how do you breed neon tetras? So I haven't done it because it's a pain. So there's a certain amount of, I guess you would say, there's an economic side of that. So when you're breeding the tetras, they are egg scatterers. And so the way that they're typically bred is you put some Java moss down and you let them do their egg scattering thing. Sometimes I've seen people where they will put marbles down and they will actually have like an egg crate and then they have the eggs fall under that. Sometimes that requires, it's definitely going to require the proper water parameters. So it's going to be softer water with a lower pH. If you do the moss thing, if it gets caught up in the moss, you generally throw that in a 10-gallon tank. The eggs will hatch within a few days. The problem is feeding them. All right, so they're far too small to use the live baby brine shrimp, so maybe you're using the infusoria, and so that can be kind of a pain. And the reason why I say I don't do it from the economics perspective, because I don't think I would. It's easier for me to just buy 50 neons than try to breed them and have that kind of a thing. But that can be a little bit more of a challenge, neons. But I haven't bred them, so I don't have any like really awesome insight for you. What do you got? You just chilling?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just thinking to myself, if I could like breed green neons, I would be one happy camper.
I don't know. How do you get obsessed with green neons? I like them. Don't get me wrong.
In a big school, they're like stunning, and I want a big, ginormous school of them. Someday I'm gonna get it too.
Yeah, I hope you do. I hope you get all the green neons your heart desires. All right. So let's see here, and I'm still looking at the questions.
Oh, Aragonite sand.
Aragonite?
Is it?
Yeah.
Patrick, new to cichlids, baseline pH. Do you see that one?
No. Oh, here. You're new to cichlids. My baseline pH GHKH is low. I plan on using aragonite sand and crushed coral mix in my Mbuna substrate. Would limestone hardscape be beneficial in keeping water parameter stability? Yeah, it probably would. Again, what you're calling limestone, I think may also what we label as flagstone. You just have to make sure that tank is settled, because at least for the flagstone, in soft water with a low pH, that can really increase the pH. So anytime you're going to be putting stuff in a tank before you put any fish, if you're going to be using all those things, if you're going to be using the aragonite, you're going to be using the crushed coral, you're going to be using flagstone, I think is a really good one. Put all that together and have patience. Don't be in a hurry. See what that does to your water parameters. See what your water parameters are without any life in there. What is your pH? What is your GH? What is your KH? And then once that's stable and it's within the parameters that you're looking for, now you can start adding small amounts of fish, because the next question is, once you start adding fish with a cycled tank, what does the production of ammonia to nitrate do? Is your water buffered enough so that when they start producing those things, you don't get a crash in your pH? And I don't think you will. I think you're doing the right things, but you just want to be a little bit careful of that. I saw something.
Oh, yeah.
Wait.
Do you see the question on carpeting plants? We don't have any experience on carpeting plants.
You did.
It's still,
you did the dwarf hair grass because you wanted it so bad, and
yeah.
I said, well, we're not running CO2, we're not running really good lights.
I know the lights weren't that good. I mean, it did stay alive. It didn't really procreate or anything, but the
Did you just say procreate?
I did. I just sometimes
What kind of live stream are we in right now?
Well, the plants
propagate.
Just both P words, whatever.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to bleep that one out somehow.
So, I did try very early on when I was getting my own aquariums. I insisted on getting Monte Carlo, and he told me the lights were not strong enough, and I was like, yeah. Well, sure enough, it died like right away. So, carpeting plants are on my list at some point, but no, we have no.
So I just saw a funny one. The Irishman says, mystery snails smell like no other. That is absolutely true. So, funny story. There was something happened. And it's really bad when you've got like a mystery snail breeding tank, and all of a sudden like one dies. Well, sometimes they're all just kind of like chilling out and they're not crawling around the tank, right? And all of a sudden one dies, and if you don't notice it right away, and if another one dies, you've got kind of a problem. Well, the boys realized that a couple of them had died, so I'm like, you got to check all the mystery snails and see and make sure that the ones that are dead are removed. So they start picking them up, and of course, like the body starts coming out. Well, what do?
Oh no!
I tell them, throw the mystery snails in a Ziploc bag, Ziploc it, lock it up, and then we're going to seal it in the garage and make sure that you do that. You know what they did? They took the mystery snails out, forgot all of that instruction, chucked them in the garbage in the downstairs basement, in the basement downstairs.
Classic.
And then I come down there the next day, and I'm like,
were your eyes watering?
And it was only like 2 or 3 of them, and it was so horrible. And then what makes it worse is, when you have a garbage bag that smells, you eventually have to close the bag up and tie it shut. And what happens when you squeeze the bag together before you can get it tied shut? You get a big poof of air. Dead mystery snail all up in your face. So,
oh no.
Yeah,
that's a horrible story.
Yeah, that's fish keeping for you. I think my kids did that on purpose. I think they're like, you made me pull out these mystery snails? Hey, Eli, let's just chuck them in the regular garbage.
That's fine.
Yeah, watch Dad. He's going to be down there dry heaving in the morning. Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, Chad said, we watched Elf tonight. Yep. Son of a nutcracker.
Yeah.
We have, so I don't know about you guys, but our Christmas movie rotation is usually Christmas Vacation, Elf, Home Alone, Die Hard. That is a Christmas movie.
No, it's not.
Lethal Weapon, also a Christmas movie. Lethal Weapon is the original. He even buys a Christmas tree. I mean, come on.
Watch that. White Christmas all the way.
Woo! And Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie. Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. And then we'll add in some of the cartoons, and the kids don't watch them anymore because they're old, and we're sitting there.
It's okay.
2 grown-ups watching Charlie Brown Christmas.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yeah.
Right. And I did see a comment before. I got a rock. I think Noelle left a comment from the Halloween, Charlie Brown Halloween. I got a rock.
Okay.
See, we got a rock.
We have a rock. All right. What else? Have you ever sold fish online? No. So, well, yes, but not when I don't ship fish. So we get that question all the time. Do you ship fish? Do you sell fish? Yes, we sell fish. Sometimes I will post fish that we sell online for pickup at some of the swaps and auctions that we do. And the reason I don't sell them is most of the fish that we have that people want are like, hey, would you ship some Maltese or some Similis or some Cyprichromis? One, I have no experience shipping fish, so that's strike one. Strike two is Lake Tanganyika fish do very poorly when there's any ammonia that's built up in a bag or the temperatures go too far down. So that's strikes 2 and 3. And I am fairly certain it would be a disaster. So I can move all my fish when the swaps and the auctions are up and running. So I don't want to take the hassle of trying to sell them online. But there are professionals that do that, like with the nanofish. Flip Aquatics, who's a channel sponsor, does great with the nanofish. If you're looking for cichlids, I often recommend the Wet Spot. I think they're on the West Coast, but they've got so much experience shipping fish. It's like, why would you want to order fish from someone like me who just doesn't do it?
Mm-hmm. And I think MNC Aquatics, yes, the Grinch also, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Grinch.
Classic, yeah.
And Frosty, and then the one with the I Want to Be a Dentist. What was that one?
I mean, which one? That's Rudolph.
Oh, is that Rudolph?
Rudolph and Hermie.
Okay, yeah, I just know he wants to be a dentist. That's all.
He does. He finally does become a dentist.
Yeah, Christmas Vacation, I can pretty much recite that entire movie line by line. You just pick up one line, and then I can just go from there. Hold on, Jesse's got a question.
Why is the carpet wet, Todd?
I don't know, Margot. So Jesse has a question. See, it's a question. It's even got little asterisks.
Oh, yeah.
Do you recommend fasting your fish once a week? Doesn't hurt. I don't do it, but I know people do.
Yep.
And I know people who do it, for an entire day or for a couple days, especially if some people who have cichlids. I just don't. I just generally feed them twice a day. So once in the morning, once at night, small meals, and they've always been healthy. Now, here's one of the reasons why I do that. We do keep a lot of cichlids. One of the things that I think is most important when it comes to cichlid aggression is making sure their bellies are full. Fish get hangry, just like human beings do. Yep. And when their little tiny stomachs are growling, they tend to be a little bit more aggressive. And so I am a strong believer in, if you want to cut down on fish predation, if you're breeding fish and you want to cut down on the fish consuming other fish like the fry, feed them smaller meals multiple times a day. And as long as they're happy, they tend to not chase each other around quite as much. At least that's what I found. And again, I think the best example that I can provide is we have large Oscar, we have large cichlids in the 125, and those fish will breed. And you'd be surprised how many fry survive and actually grow up in that tank. And part of the reason why is the larger fish are like, yeah, I could eat most of these fish in here, but I'm being well fed and I don't want to chase them around. So it goes a long way, and I think there's definitely some advantages there.
Myrtle, no worries. We mentioned Home Alone. That was like the third one.
Oh yeah, Home Alone's definitely a thing.
Best soundtrack.
Amphibious aquatics. Can you keep multiple species of Epistogramma together in a 75-gallon? Not interested in breeding them. If you're not interested in breeding them, and as long as you don't allow any of the hybrids to kind of get out there somewhere, like, hey, I'm breaking down my tank, here's a bunch of random Epistos. Yeah, again, if you're keeping multiples, it's just like if you're keeping a bunch of one species, you just have to make sure that they've got a place to call home, that they've got line of sight blocks. But 75 gallons is a pretty big surface area for keeping smaller nano-size Epistos. Could they hybridize? Absolutely. And the purists would say that's probably not the best idea just because of that. But like all cichlids, and I always say, have a backup plan, right? Because you can mix some fish just like your Nanochromis.
Yeah.
You could put fish in a tank and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, you know what? It turns out the Epistogramma cockatoides is beating the heck out of my Borellii, or my Panduros they were a lot more aggressive than they thought they were going to be, and now my triple reds are getting chased around. Because the important thing too is with the Epistos, one of the great things about them is the finnage. And if they've got those nice long trailers and all of a sudden they're getting fin net, then it's like, well, why am I keeping Epistos if half of them are all torn up?
That's
right?
no good.
But yeah, it's something you can try. Let's see here. Oh, Jack asked a good question. Has there ever been a fish you have never had any luck keeping? Oh, there's been quite a few that I pretty much stay away from now. German blue rams. Our pH
I know, what a bummer.
Our pH is an 8.2. We have hard water. I think part of it is I am convinced that in some of the lines of German blue rams, the genetics are horrible. And because of that, you combine all those things. And I'm not saying for like the breeders who take care in breeding those fish, but if you go to like some of the big box stores and stuff, the German blue rams, at least for us, have tended not to do all that well. So I stay away from them. I have a heck of a time with Otos. I cannot keep Otocinclus alive. And so I've had them multiple times. And that's why I generally don't talk about them. So when we're talking about like algae eaters and stuff, or best ways to reduce algae, and I almost always leave the Otos off of my brain inventory because I get them. I can keep in large groups, and I just think our water parameters aren't great for them, and they, for whatever reason, they don't do well. I'm trying to think of what else.
They're so cute.
There's for a while, guppies, store-bought guppies. I think that in some cases they are so inbred right now that if you get a lot of the store-bought guppies, unless you've got someone who's buying from a local breeder, they can be horrible. I've had such terrible luck with most store-bought guppies, but then I got him, I think, Twin Cities guppies, and he's got some really high-end stuff, and we've got a colony that we got 4 years, or we've got a group, and now we've got a colony that we had for 4 years, and they're fantastic. So yeah, everybody's got fish where it's just like, man, I just can't keep these things alive. So it can get somewhat frustrating.
Yes.
All right, we'll take a few more questions because we're running up on the time now.
Brian wants to know what is good for a 40-gallon tank, and I have angelfish.
A 40-gallon tank. So is it a 40 breeder or is it just a regular 40? Because that can make a little bit of a difference. Angelfish in a 40. So let's assume it's either standard 40, even if it's a 40 breeder. Well, so you've got the normal, I'd say like the standard kind of thing, Cory cats, right? So that's like your ground. It's your ground game is the Cory cats, or maybe some bristlenose plecos, clown plecos. For the algae cleanup side of things, if you wanted to do like hatchet fish at the top, someone mentioned that last week, and I love hatchet fish. They're like one of those fish that remind me of when I was a kid. We always had silver hatchets in our fish tanks. I don't know what it was, and now they got the marbles, the silver hatchet fish for the top. Possibly rainbows. They tend not to be as finippy as some of the others. And now you got to be careful. I guess you should probably be careful with the rainbows. Sometimes they can be a little bit overactive for angels. What else? Larger rasboras. I like the brilliant greens. I think those are pretty cool. So those might work. Full grown, like pork chop rasboras or the hets. But I wouldn't buy the small ones that have like a full-size angel, and then next thing you're like, yeah, thanks a lot, man. Just fed my angel a bunch of rasboras. It was like a $20 feeding. But if you've got them full grown, they can work, right? What else? Angels. I'm trying to think in a 40. That's a good start, right? If you're doing tetras, stay away from like the Buenos Aires. I know like the red eye tetras can be a little bit rough, but if you did like,
what about the white ones that we have?
Oh, the white skirts. Actually, right now with angels in a 125, we've got them with white skirts, and they've gotten along pretty decent. So, yeah, that's worked out pretty well.
Regina was kind enough to share that the penguins at a UK aquarium have chosen Elf as their favorite movie.
Of course they have. Why wouldn't they?
Well, and that brings to mind another great movie, Madagascar. Anyways.
That's not a Christmas movie.
There was a question from Sarah. She's got a 30-gallon planted tank that's getting overrun with platies. I cut back on feeding and removed the floating plant cover.
Yeah.
Any more tips to discourage breeding and encourage them to snack on fry?
Well, and that's the same thing with our mollies, our black mollies and our 50-gallon lowboy. They kind of go through spurts where they'll breed a lot and then we don't see as many fry. So I think the adults start preying on them a little bit more. At some point, you're going to reach a critical mass. If you've got a mechanism to get rid of them, bring them to a pet store and be like, hey, I'll trade you these 20 platies for some fish food or something like that. They can still usually sell them for a few bucks, so it might make sense. But in terms of cutting down, I have found that the more you keep fish in a community setting, the less likely fry are going to survive. And so even if it's something like, hey, I added a dwarf gourami, and it's not that a dwarf gourami is going to be like highly predatory, but it's a fish full grown that's large enough where it's like, oh, what are these tiny little things floating up here? Boom. And then they'll just pick off enough of them where it'll keep your populations under control. So dwarf gourami, I don't know why that came to mind, but I thought that might be something. And it's not guaranteed that's going to eat the fry, but again, it's that community sort of thing. Anything that's going to be slightly larger than a platy as an adult, that's not going to pick on your adult platies and ruin the vibe. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. We'll take let's do a couple more here.
Frank says Die Hard's the best Christmas movie.
Thank
there
you,
go.
Frank. You're right there, man. It's absolutely a Christmas movie. Let's see. Oh, I had one and then I lost it, man. Let's see. I had it. Wait. Oh, Big Papa. How many fish to shrimp ratio for a 5-gallon? Any recommendations? If I were keeping shrimp in a 5-gallon, I'm not sure I would add fish. Only because, one, if your shrimp breed, they can actually get fairly prolific, and you might have a situation where you've got to remove some shrimp if you want them to breed. Now, if you don't want them to breed, maybe like the combination that's worked for us is like the Neocaridina shrimp with the Heteroandra formosa, the Florida least killifish. So something very tiny like that, or maybe like some of the, what are those, like the smaller rasboras that only get to be like an inch or so. But if you want the shrimp to breed, you're probably better off with not. I saw you followed up with like lamp eye rasboras. Yeah, they're probably small enough, but they're somewhat active for a 5-gallon too. The 5-gallon can be tough, right? Even like the female bettas or male bettas, they're going to eat your shrimp. Really good. Yeah, New England Endler. Female betta will definitely hunt down the platy fry. Yeah, female or male will hunt them down. Females are a little bit more agile. So when it comes to the 5-gallon shrimp, I kind of like to leave them on their own. The Florida least killie has worked, whereas they're not preying on fry, but you might get a lot of shrimp in that tank over a shorter period of time once they start getting comfortable. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see here. We'll take a couple more. Oh, I got a Geophagus question from Brad. I like Geophagus. Wow. Will 4 topos and some angels and cory cats in a 75 require regular large water changes? 4 topos and some angels and cory cats in a 75-gallon. Yes, it will require regular water changes, not necessarily large. It also kind of depends on if you're going to be putting plants in. So I always, when it comes to water changes, what I'm trying to do, and I've said this a lot, is I am looking at my nitrate concentrations to kind of determine what kind of water changes I'm going to do. My goal is 20 parts per million. I don't like it to peak much beyond that. So if I know that I have to change 30% of the water every week, once a week, to keep my range from, let's say, 15 parts to 20 parts per million, that's what I do. So part of it's just going to depend on what kind of plants you have, how many cories you have, how many angels is some angels. I would, yeah, you're going to have to do weekly water changes. How much is, try to keep your nitrates at 20-ish parts per million maxed out. And I think you'll be, once you have that dialed in, you'll be okay. Okay. Let's see here. Christy Miller. Hello, everyone. Just wondering about recommendations for how many angelfish in a 55-gallon. That kind of depends on your goals. So if the issue there is going to be what happens when you get pairs, because if you're looking at a group of angels in a 55 and they start pairing up and they start laying eggs and they start protecting those areas, then you've got some issues with them pushing the other angels to the other side of the tank. If you get 2 pairs, now you have some issues with the rest of the thing. But if you're just, I'm not interested in breeding, I'm not really going to try to give them a surface to breed. In a 55, you've got a nice tall tank. Maybe, it so much depends on what your dominant male is going to do. So I can tell you what I would do in a 55. I would keep 1. And that way I know that I'm not going to have any issues with the aggression. you could try getting some small ones. Like right now in our 125, we have 5 or 6 of them, and they generally leave each other alone. But that's a 6-foot tank, not a 4-foot tank. So if you start out with 5 or 6, and look at that dynamic and see what's happening. How many males do you wind up with? Is there any fighting? Because you might wind up with a situation where, oh, I have 1 male and 4 females, and that's not as bad, right? So, but 1 is always safe. Regina, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate the super chat. All right, how about one more question? One more.
Shrimp, what's
Let's see here. And by the way, thank you to our wonderful moderators for doing all that you do. I know it's a lot to keep up with, and you guys do a great job.
Thank you, Mary Page. Thank you, Myrtle.
Yeah, you guys do awesome. Okay, let me see here. Let me see.
I don't know how they type so fast.
They just do. That's just the thing. Hold on. Here we got one. Can you do sailfin mollies and Sahika?
Sahika, I love
in a
Sahika.
40 breeder with maybe Angelica's cat? Yeah, I think those would probably get along. We've had all of the above. The catfish might be a little bit active for that group. They just tend to be a little bit crazy. Instead of that, you could potentially look at maybe some of the smaller, like the dwarf Petricola Synodontis might be a better option just in that size tank, because those Angelica's cats can get pretty hyper in such a small area. But the sailfins and the Sahikas aren't particularly, at least they weren't for us. They were never unusually aggressive. And the sailfin mollies can hold their own. The sailfin mollies do get big. I mean, they can get every bit to 5 or 6 inches just in their body length. So you might consider, okay, and that's another one where if you've got multiple males in that tank, that may not work out. So maybe you've got 1 male sailfin with 2 or 3 or 4 females, and then you've got a male, maybe a pair of Sahikas. But even in our 40 breeder, we had, I want to say, a group of at least 6, and they were, even when they were breeding, the breeding pair just kind of had their little area dug out in a rock, and they weren't super aggressive towards the others. They had the other side of the tank, and they pretty much left each other alone. So, yeah, I think that could work. All right, everyone. We're always well past our hour time that we set for ourselves. But just want to say thank you once again for being here. Really appreciate your support. Really appreciate all the super chats. And again, the moderators and everybody who supports the channel by watching the videos and doing all that you do. We will definitely see you next week. If you really need some more prime time aquatics fix, that's the small scape Joanna's channel where she just did that tank back there. It's pretty cool. I enjoyed looking at that video and editing it all and all that stuff, and it was pretty interesting. So thank you so much. We will see you hopefully next Wednesday.
Okay.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye.